The rain had a rhythm that night, soft, uncertain, like the tremor in Henry Carlisle's hands. He sat by his window in a small London flat that had seen better years, the dim streetlight outside casting a faint golden glow over the dusty violin case resting on his lap. It had been 28 years since he'd last opened it. Henry had been many things in life: a busker, a teacher, a dreamer, and, for a short while, a husband. But music, the kind that spoke without words, had been the one constant, the thing that stitched meaning into his existence. Until one stormy night long ago, when everything had fallen apart. The violin case creaked open like an old book remembering its story. Inside lay a once beautiful instrument, its wood dulled by time, strings lifeless, bow frayed. His fingers trembled as he brushed the dust from its surface, as if awakening an old friend from a long sleep. He whispered, "Still here, old girl." The violin didn't answer, but something inside him stirred, a faint pulse of memory. It had been his late wife, Clara, who'd first called it magic. "Henry," she'd said, eyes alight, "when you play, it's like you bend sound itself. Like gravity listens to you." She'd died 28 years ago in a car accident, right after his last concert, a charity performance that had been meant to fund their little music school. She never made it to the venue. After that night, Henry stopped playing. He took odd jobs, repaired bicycles, swept floors. Music, his gift, his curse, became too painful to touch. But tonight, he sat in silence, staring at the worn-out audition form on his kitchen table. Britain's Got Talent, open auditions, all ages welcome. It was his granddaughter, Lily, who'd filled it out for him. She was 9, with his late wife's fire in her eyes and none of his fear. "Grandpa," she'd said, "Mum says you used to make violins sing. I want to hear them sing again." He had laughed, tried to brush it off, but that night her words replayed in his head like a melody he couldn't forget. And now, here he was. He lifted the violin, tightened the bow, and drew it across the strings. The sound that came out was fragile, broken, but beneath the cracks was something pure, a whisper of the magic that once silenced entire halls. The room seemed to hum softly around him. The air shimmered, ever so faintly, as though responding to the sound. Henry froze. "No, that's impossible." He played again, this time more deliberately. And as the note rang, a strand of his lamp's light bent, curling like a golden thread drawn toward the violin. It lasted a second, maybe less. Then everything stilled. He set the instrument down, heart pounding. Was it the wine, the exhaustion, or had he just done something he couldn't explain? The next morning, he packed the violin in its case, put on his oldest coat, and boarded the train to Manchester, where the Britain's Got Talent auditions were being held. He didn't know what he was searching for. But he knew it was time. The waiting room buzzed with nervous energy. Teenagers in sequined jackets practiced dance moves, choirs whispered last-minute harmonies, magicians fumbled through decks of cards. Henry stood in the corner, invisible, a ghost among dreamers. His violin case rested against his leg, and his hands shook so badly he had to clasp them together to stop. A young producer approached. "Name, please." "Henry Carlisle." "Age?" 54. She smiled politely, her expression softening when she saw the violin. "Oh, lovely. Are you a classical musician?" He hesitated. "I used to be." She handed him a small card. "Stage 3. You'll be up after the dog act." He managed a weak smile. "Perfect." The stage assistant led him through the corridors toward the main hall. Every step echoed with the ghosts of his past, the applause he'd once earned, the laughter of Clara in the front row, the silence of her absence afterward. Then, the door opened, and he saw the audience. Thousands of faces, waiting. The 4 judges, Simon, Amanda, Alicia, and Bruno, sat under blinding lights, ready to measure his worth in minutes. He stepped onto the stage. The murmur of the crowd died down. Simon leaned forward. "Hello, sir. What's your name?" "Henry Carlisle." "And how old are you?" 54. Simon smiled faintly. "All right, Henry. What will you be doing for us today?" Henry swallowed. "I play the violin." There was polite applause. Simon tilted his head. "What makes your performance special?" Henry looked at the instrument, then at the sea of faces. "Because this violin was silent for 28 years. Tonight, it speaks again." The crowd murmured. Simon nodded once. "Whenever you're ready." Henry closed his eyes. The bow touched the strings. The first note trembled, uncertain. But then came another, richer, purer. The sound grew, spilling into the hall like sunlight through shattered glass. It wasn't just music, it was emotion woven into motion. The judges leaned forward. Alicia's eyes widened. And then, it happened. As he played, the air above his violin rippled. Light bent, sound shimmered. The very stage seemed to breathe. The bow moved impossibly fast, the notes forming spirals of vibrating light that wrapped around him like ribbons of sound. The audience gasped. A child pointed. "Mummy, look. The light's dancing." Henry's fingers moved with unnatural precision. It wasn't an illusion. The resonance itself seemed to distort space, making the violin hum in ways no physics could explain. Simon whispered, "What is happening?" Henry opened his eyes mid-play, tears streaming down his cheeks. He wasn't performing for fame or judges, he was playing for Clara, for Lily, for every lost moment. The final note rose, a whisper that climbed into silence. And then, utter stillness. The hall was frozen. No one breathed. Then came the sound. Thunderous applause. Amanda covered her mouth, crying. That wasn't just music. That was life. Simon leaned back, visibly shaken. Henry Carlyle, that was beyond talent. That was something else. Henry lowered the violin, smiling softly. I only played what was already there, in the air. The golden buzzer light gleamed above Simon's hand, but he hesitated, not out of doubt, but awe. And then, boom, gold confetti erupted. Henry fell to his knees as the music of his own making echoed faintly around him, like the world itself was applauding. After the audition aired, Henry Carlyle became an overnight sensation. Headlines called him, the man who bent sound, Britain's miracle musician, the violin that defied physics. But behind the fame was a man still haunted by loss. He sat in a quiet cafe weeks later, newspaper spread out before him, reading about himself as if he were a stranger. People saw magic, but they didn't see the pain that made it. Lily ran in, her school bag bouncing. "Grandpa, you're on telly again." He smiled. "Am I now?" She nodded eagerly. "Mum says Grandma would be proud." The words hit him like sunlight through clouds. He took Lily's hand. "Would you like to learn the violin?" Her eyes widened. "Can you teach me?" "I can try." Days became weeks. Their little living room turned into a music haven. Sheet music scattered everywhere, the scent of old wood filling the air. Lily's laughter echoed through the flat, the same laughter Clara once had. And every note Henry taught her felt like a bridge between past and present. But strange things began to happen again. Sometimes, when they played together, the air shimmered faintly. Sound waves seemed to twist, harmonizing with light. Once, Lily's bow lifted slightly from her string, but the note continued. She gasped. "Grandpa, did you see that?" Henry nodded slowly. "It's happening again." He realized it wasn't just him. It was the music itself. It had always been there, energy made visible through emotion. He hadn't defied physics. He'd simply played in harmony with it. Still, fame came knocking. Producers wanted interviews, scientists wanted to study him. But all Henry wanted was peace, and the stage one last time. The Britain's Got Talent finale loomed. And Henry knew what he would play, the unfinished piece Clara had written before she died, a melody meant for two violins. One she never got to perform.